beneficial at first glance. However, I'm here to flip the script, as we've been hammering home the fact that it's going to negatively affect landlords, but it's also going to negatively affect tenants even more. You are using this as a cure-all for the issue at hand of homelessness. This law is not going to cure that issue. It is going to hinder it, and here's why. There are several reasons why these laws ain't beneficial for tenants as they appear. Number one, limited flexibility for landlords. Good cause eviction laws often restrict landlords' ability to make business decisions regarding their properties, such as raising rent, evicting problematic tenants, or making necessary renovations. This can lead to fewer rental properties available on the market, as landlords may choose to sell or stop renting out their properties, instead dealing with regulations they find burdensome. The resulting housing shortage can push up rent prices, making it harder for tenants to find affordable housing. Number two, stagnation in housing quality. While good cause eviction laws are meant to prevent unfair evictions, they can discourage landlords from well-maintained. Landlords may be less inclined to repairs and upgrades if they know they cannot evict tenants for failing to pay rent on time or for causing damage to the property. This could result in tenants living in deteriorating conditions with little recourse to move elsewhere. Number three, increase in rent. In some cases, landlords may respond to good cause eviction laws by raising rent across the board to cover potential losses from being unable to evict non-paying tenants or those who do not follow lease terms. You may see these rent hikes outside of the city of Binghamton, which is going to cause more strain on tenants outside of the city limits, which will then certainly have a negative effect on housing options available. While the law protects tenants in certain situations, it can ultimately lead to higher costs for everyone, leaving low-income tenants struggling with increased housing expenses. You also have unintended consequences for vulnerable tenants. Although good cause eviction laws are designed to protect tenants from unfair evictions, they can sometimes inadvertently harm the vulnerable tenants. For example, tenants who may have experienced issues such as job loss, health problems, or personal crises could find it difficult to meet the criteria required to stay in the homes under these laws, such as paying rent consistently. As a result, they may face eviction under more rigid terms, leaving them with fewer housing options. Overall, while good cause eviction law aims to tenant and landlord rights, they can lead to unintended negative consequences that harm tenants by reducing housing availability, increasing rents, and discouraging landlords from maintaining or improving properties. So that's what I have to say about good cause eviction. But on a different topic, I would also like to point out that my husband Dave and I, whom are both licensed real estate professionals, we currently have a bank portfolio of 37 properties for sale that were Isaac Azards. Of those 37 properties, 28 of those properties are currently vacant and boarded up. Of those properties, 25 of them are currently under contract and are scheduled to be closing within the next month or two. What is alarming is I've noticed that there has been a lot of vandalism at some of the properties with black spray paint stating that humans deserve housing. I don't disagree with that statement. I think that all humans do deserve housing. But I personally would appreciate whomever has decided to vandalize these properties to please stop. We are all working hard to sell these properties to be rehabbed, so then we can fill them with local people who need a place to live. Vandalizing the properties is going against the grain of the good work that we're trying to do in this community. And to the people who are doing it, instead of spray painting them, I highly suggest some of you pool your money together, purchase one of them, rehab it yourself, and load it full of local individuals who need housing that you want to help.
Your time is up. Sorry.
I have one sentence left. That would be a good move, not the spray paint. Then you can also at the same time become a local City of Binghamton landlord, and you can understand the hardships that we all face.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come down and make a comment? If you plan on speaking, it would help if you fill in these seats down here so that we can transition between speakers a little bit quicker. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Gale. I'm the local president of the Broome County Board of Realtors. I also work in the city of Binghamton and own multifamilies in the city of Binghamton. I know in the past we've gone over like the reasons why we're against the good cause eviction, but I want to point out today some of the good cause eviction law, rent control policies that could have negative impacts on everybody involved, not just the landlords or the property owners, but also the tenants and the broader community as a whole. As far as impact on the tenants, it's definitely going to reduce the rental supply. With stricter policies and rent control, landlords may choose to sell their properties. Since we've been here discussing this in January, there's been over 80 properties that are either two families or above or large commercial buildings where the landlords have said, we're bailing out of Binghamton. That hurts me and it should hurt everybody here. I've been involved in the city of Binghamton for over 24 years with a multi, and I actually liked Binghamton when I first started buying the properties, but today it's as a realtor and representing the realtors, it's a really hard thing to swallow because how could we in good faith try to promote the city of Binghamton knowing that this is going on? It will cause higher rents for tenants, decrease property maintenance because the landlords will not get the rent that they need to fix up their properties. It will fewer housing options. The impact on the landlords would be a financial strain, especially on the small property owners. It's going to be harder to remove problematic tenants. I know we went through the list and the reasons why you can evict, but sitting in eviction court frequently on and off for the last 24 years, it can be a challenge when somebody does need to be removed. It will be a distinctive to invest in rental properties. The landlords fear they won't be able to adjust the rents or remove tenants when needed. Possible increases in foreclosures. I cover 8 to 9 counties at any given time surrounding the greater Binghamton area. And the majority of the foreclosures are located within Broome County and then City of Binghamton. That's not a good thing. We don't want more foreclosures. We would rather fill these properties up with everybody that needs housing and make it affordable. The general impact on the community, it's definitely going to cause a housing shortage. There's going to be an increase in zombie properties. Like the speaker before me mentioned, there was 38, but there was also another 14 last year of the Anzenbrook properties. And there's many more that are not on the record yet, and they are boarded throughout the city of Binghamton. It's also going to cause a shift in neighborhood demographics. And the local tax revenue declines. I reviewed the mayor's budget for this year, and I think it said almost 33% of the budget comes from property tax. Another large percentage comes from mortgage tax, which happens whenever you sell a property. And then there was other things that were related. The sales tax was a big one. So anything that is spent in the city of Binghamton, whether you're building or whatever you're doing, that tax revenue is a huge chunk of the city's budget. And I think this makes no sense to go forward with this. And I propose that we get a task group between several of the city council members. We could get the realtor groups, the landlord groups, and the general public, and see if we could come up with a resolution so that it would be a win-win for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I know I'm not supposed to ask the question, but by show of hands, oh, sorry. There you go. By show of hands, who here owns multifamily properties in the city of Binghamton? One of you? Okay. So here's my take on things. I understand what this is trying to do to try and help tenants. Although a good tenant doesn't get evicted. Landlords don't want to evict good tenants, right? And we have everything in good cause. If they don't pay, if there's problems, if it's problematic, you can still evict. I understand, I get this. You didn't look at the flip side. I'm a broker, I'm a real estate broker. I've been in business for 25 years. I currently have 3 FHA qualified buyers that can only afford to buy a 2-family. Well, that's not true. 2 of them could afford to buy a single family, but they don't want to. I have 2 sisters born and raised in the city of Binghamton. They want to buy a 2-family. They have to go FHA because their debt to income ratio does not qualify them for conventional. Being FHA, it's got to be a property that's in good condition, right? Any property that comes on the market now, which there are some, they can't get because they are occupied by tenants. There's no vacancy. We can't give them an eviction notice when we get a commitment letter from the bank saying that they can go in. So here's these 3 different families that want to be owner occupies in the city of Binghamton and they can't buy. And this is affecting them greatly. I am one realtor. I'm one person. I can't imagine how many of the other what do we have, Joe, 480 realtors out there? 500 realtors out there. I'm one, and I'm facing this. It's a problem. This morning, there was a beautiful 2-family on Howard Ave that came up. My girl can't buy it because in order to close on it, 1 unit has to be vacant for owner occupancy. This law kills that. I don't understand the need for this. I really don't. I truly don't see it. I haven't heard about it. Have I had some people say, boy, I want to take this property back because my daughter needs a place now? They can still do that within the parameters of this. Who are we helping? What's going on here? We are not New York City. I understand New York City implemented this and Albany grabbed it and somebody else grabbed it. It's ridiculous for our town. We need to encourage owner occupancy, and this does the opposite. It's discouraging owner occupancy because you can't get into a good property. If they had the money to buy a fixer-upper, they could probably do it. You know, I think it was Kim was talking about all of her boarded up properties. An investor has to do that. These people who want to live in the house and be an owner occupied can't do that. So you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And I stand with the mayor's eviction or veto of this. And I think that you should consider what Joe mentioned about creating a different type of forum where everybody can come in and talk about this, because you're not helping the city of Binghamton, you're not helping the tax base, and you are hurting the people, good people who want to be here and owner occupy. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed your name. Can you state your name for the record? I apologize for not asking sooner.
Francie Cook.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wanted to come down for comment? We had a number of written comments. Do you want to get started with those?
From Joe Gale, good afternoon, city council members and city clerk. On behalf of the G-Bar and the New York State Association of Realtors, we have reaffirmed our opposition to the good cause eviction law. I fully support Mayor Cram's decision to veto the city council's vote. Please find our rationale outlined below. G-Bar and NYSAR oppose oppressive regulations, imposition of local good cause eviction, and rent control measures. NYSAR opposes the imposition of local good cause eviction and rent control policies which discourage new housing development and exacerbate the state's current zombie property dilemma. Both measures place a disproportionate financial burden on small property owners already struggling to afford rising property taxes, utility bills, and maintenance costs. In order to address New York's rising rents and housing shortage, state and local officials must enact meaningful policies to spur more housing growth for all income levels. New York State's good cause eviction law. On April 20th, 2024, New York State's good cause eviction law took effect after being passed as part of the state budget. This law applies to New York City only. However, it gives cities towns and villages throughout the state the power to opt into the state law via their local legislative bodies. Overview of good cause eviction law. The version of good cause eviction that is now law differs substantially from the original legislation that was introduced in 2019. The original legislation would have applied statewide and did not provide the opportunity for localities to opt out. The new good cause eviction law prohibits the eviction or removal of tenants from all housing accommodations without good cause, but exempts the following housing accommodations. Premises owned by a small landlord. Small landlords are defined as any owner of no more than 10 units in the state. Owner occupied housing with no more than 10 units. Units that are sublet or being used for employment purposes. Rent regulated units and affordable housing units, condominium or cooperative units. Units with a certificate of occupancy issued after 1/1/2009 for up to 30 years after the issuance of the certificate. Seasonal use dwelling units. Certain units used for healthcare purposes, hospital assisted living, etc. Manufactured homes, hotels, dormitories, religious facilities and institutions, units with a monthly rent greater than 245% of the fair market rent as determined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The following are grounds for removal of tenants under the good cause eviction law. The tenant has failed to pay rent unless the rent that is owed is a result of an unreasonable rent increase. Unreasonable is defined as the lower of 5% plus the regional CPI or 10% annually. The tenant has violated a substantial obligation of their tenancy. The tenant is just permitting or committing a nuisance. The tenant's occupation of the housing accommodation is a violation of law which subjects the landlord to civil or criminal penalties. The tenant is using the accommodation illegally. The tenant has refused access to the landlord for necessary repairs. The landlord seeks to recover the unit for personal or familial use. The landlord in good faith seeks to demolish the housing accommodation. The landlord in good faith seeks to withdraw the unit from the rental market. The tenant fails to agree to reasonable changes to a lease or renewal. Localities that opt into the good cause eviction law may modify the fair market rent threshold. Units with monthly rents above the fair market rent would be exempt, and the definition of small landlord. For instance, the city of Albany opted into good cause eviction and lowered the threshold for exemptions from 10 units to 1 unit. Landlords renting units subject to the good cause eviction law are required to attach a specific notice to any initial lease, lease renewal, or other notice required by the state's landlord tenant laws, indicating that the unit is subject to the good cause eviction law. The good cause eviction law is scheduled to expire on June 15th, 2034. The good cause eviction law is then linked in this article. Localities that have opted into the good cause eviction law: Albany City adopted in June 24, Kington City adopted in July 24, Ithaca City adopted July 2024, Poughkeepsie City adopted July 2024, Beacon City adopted August 2024, Newburgh City adopted September 2024, Nyack Village adopted September 2024, Hudson City adopted October 2024, New Paltz Village adopted October 2024, Rochester City adopted December 2024, Fishkill Town adopted January 2025, Catskill Village adopted January 2025, Croton-on-Hudson Village adopted 2025 January. From David Micah, council members, I'm writing you today in regards to the good cause eviction and what you are voting on today. As I understand, your end game is to help the homelessness issue in Broome County. This law is not going to help the issue at all. The legislative piece that you want to pass is only going to hinder the work that you've been doing to help with homelessness. Rental practices are going to become more strict with landlords, etc. We need more affordable housing, not putting restraints on the landlords that are currently here, trying to assist with getting people housing. We have landlords in this area that are great, and we have landlords that are not so great. We also have many great programs such as Opportunities for Broome and Tioga that work on a daily basis with homeless to help place them into housing. This will directly affect their efforts on the front line as well. Have you considered them? As mentioned before, you do not have all of your data to support good cause eviction and the outcome it is going to have on our community. I would highly recommend holding off on this legislation until you see what the outcomes of other counties similar to Broome have determined from their installation of good cause. As landlords, we are not stating that good cause eviction is a bad thing. There are many good aspects of it. What we are asking is for you to take the time, do your due diligence, and come up with a plan that benefits both sides of the spectrum, the landlord and the tenant. Please consider seriously coming up with a more dynamic plan to help both sides of your aisle. You took an oath of office as an elected official to uphold ethical practices for all of your constituents. Stopping and listening to both sides would do just that. Passing this law would violate it. From Anya Levitov, dear council members, please vote no on this bill. Look what it did to NYC. The housing supply shrank and the rents are sky high. The good cause eviction makes it even harder to be an individual landlord. The fewer landlords, the fewer apartments are on the market for people to live in. It is prohibitively expensive to build new housing, and even paying for a proper renovation of existing housing requires 20 years of market rent. How do you think the landlords will act in this scenario? They will sell properties or abandon them to fall apart and not deal with the limitations and restrictions of the new law. They will move their capital to invest in Housing South, where thanks to no restrictive legislation, housing is cheap and abundant. Have you heard about the housing crisis in Texas? No, because the landlords can easily evict, can build much housing cheaply with low admin barriers and without restrictive mandatory insurance, etc. A great book on how restrictive legislation from the left is killing the progressive cause. There's a link included in this email. It should be available in the library as well. Please vote no. Don't kill the remnants of affordability. Regards, Anya Levita. Next from Mark Leisha, council members, I am writing to you this morning in regards to good cause eviction. We have several housing issues in Binghamton, and I would like you to be able to do right by your constituents to find the best solutions for all involved. Rental rates in Binghamton and the rest of the country increased at an alarming rate during and directly after the COVID-19 pandemic. The inflation caused by supply and demand dislocations affected all Americans in most industries. Rents rose by double-digit percentages in Binghamton for several years. The rental rates that these increases started from were fortunately at a low level to begin with. This last year, rental growth has moderated considerably. HUD fair market rental rates in Binghamton for studio, 1-bed, 2-bed, and 3-bed all grew at less than half of the 8.45 rental increase percentage allowed by New York State good cause eviction guidelines. Studios, 1.75% growth year over year. 1-bed, 4% growth year over year. 2-bed, 4.2% growth year over year. 3-bed, 2.75% growth year over year. Now rental growth has slowed and in my opinion is still coming down even further to historical norms in the 1 to 3% yearly range for our area. Passing good cause eviction will allow landlords to raise rent prices yearly by 5%, plus the CPI inflation index for our region. This year it allows for an 8.45% increase and will average around 7 to 8% per year based on historical inflation readings. The effect that this will have is that out-of-town and absentee landlords will increase rents the maximum allowed every year. Local landlords will most likely do the same as you use or lose the rent increase, and with no cap on future expenses, must collect enough income to guarantee they can run the properties properly. This will leave most tenants with increases which will very rapidly outpace their wage growth. The wages of most employees merely track inflation, so therefore, because the law allows for inflation plus 5% rental increases, the majority of tenants' wage growth will fall short of rental increases by 5% every year. This will put them at a financial disadvantage, which compounds every year. Passing good cause eviction will likely make rental rates roughly 50% higher in 5 years. This is an easy conclusion to arrive at. 8% yearly growth for 5 years gives a total of 47% increase over this period. See below. Current year rent 1,000. Year 1 rent 1080, 8% increase from current year. Year 2 rent 1166, 8% increase from year 1. Year 3 rent 1259, 8% increase from year 2. Year 4 rent 1360, 8% increase from year 3. Year 5 rent 1469, 8% increase from year 4. Total rent increases over 5 years, 46.9%. If rental rates grow at 2.5% a year, which is historically more correct, due to market forces, the rental growth looks like this. Current year rent 1,000, year 1 rent 1025, 2.5% increase. Year 2 rent 1051, 2.5% increase. Year 3 rent 1077, 2.5% increase. Year 4 rent 1104, 2.5% increase. Year 5 rent 1132, 2.5% increase. Total rent increase over 5 years, 13.2%. I believe that by passing good cause eviction, your constituents who are renters will have their rents increased by 47% over the next 5 years, where if left to market forces and inflation would have their rents increased by roughly 13%, which is much more in line with their wage growth. By artificially forcing higher rent payments, renters will fall even further behind financially. We should wait to study how passing good cause eviction impacts other upstate municipalities before passing this here in Binghamton. From Steve, Dear council members, I'm writing to you as someone who relies on income from apartment rentals to make a modest living. Unlike the stereotypical wealthy landlord, I work hard and treat my tenants with respect and dignity. I implore you to reconsider and choose not to counter the mayor's veto. By voting against the mayor's veto, there will be a significant decrease in investor interest in the area, negatively impacting the market value of local properties. Please side with those who are trying to improve Binghamton and rely heavily on its economic growth. Thank you for your time and consideration. From Dan Inarella, City Council members, my wife and I own several properties throughout Broome County and are very concerned with the new good cause eviction legislation proposed by the City Council. While we understand the intent of the proposed legislation, however, we do not agree with the council's view that it will fix the current housing issues within the city. The city, as well as the local investment community, should know who and where the problem property owners and properties are. As such, City Council should go after those individuals and their properties and not the entire investor population at large. As a property owner over the last several years, taxes are up, insurance costs are up 40%, utility costs are up, and the cost of repairs and maintenance are up due to increased material costs across the board. Like any other business, in order to keep up with these increasing costs, we have to adjust our rates accordingly, continue as a going concern. Therefore, capping the rates we charge, as well as giving the paying customers numerous ways to pay less than what is fair and reasonable or not pay at all, directly affects our business's ability to continue. Our portfolio, along with many others like us, classify us as small business owners, therefore limiting our ability to price our product according to market factors directly affecting our businesses, and in essence, forcefully controlling how we run our businesses is unheard of and will drive many out of business. I don't see, haven't seen, or will see City Council proposed legislation dictating rate or pricing increase limits on NYSEG, insurance companies, or other supply chain contractors. Therefore, those limitations should not be placed on our small businesses. Forcibly passing and installing the good cause eviction legislation will in fact have the exact opposite effect City Council intends it to have. It will reduce investment within the city. It will disincentivize property owners from investing additional capital in their properties. Owners will keep units vacant longer. Owners will be much more selective who they rent to, and local owners will sell to non-local owners who will continue to utilize Binghamton's properties as low-cost tax write-offs. All of this will increase the city's housing and blighted property problems, not solve it. Therefore, we strongly urge you to vote against passing the good cause eviction legislation. Instead, City Council and the local investor community should work hand in hand to develop ways to collectively address and alleviate the current housing issues facing Binghamton. From Dave Drew. Good morning. I'm writing today one more time to express my opposition to this law. Do you know what's already happening based on what you've done? Thousands of low-income tenants in the city are receiving rent increases. These are rent increases they would have otherwise, if not for the impending change you are planning, not received. In fact, many property managers and landlords have recently introduced a raise in rent no matter what rule. That notice going out instructs tenants to thank their city council member directly for their rent increases. Tenants are now subject to new raises to make up for the years their landlords have kept them the same and to account for the future limits you are trying to attach across the board. Keep listening to the loudest complainers and the anecdotal corner cases, and what you will miss is the muffled silence of the people you are really hurting. Angry tenants in bad situations and leaders of local groups who are out for their own agendas are not representative of the masses. Property managers and landlords see all the great tenants we house every single day. These folks are not voicing any opposition because they had no reason to before. They were being treated fairly. I cannot believe you're letting this happen to the people who supported you. It's the most outrageous thing this council has done. From a macro level, the smart money is already moving to JC and Endicott. From James Lucenti. Dear members of the Binghamton City Council, I'm writing to express my strong opposition to the proposed good cause eviction legislation in Binghamton, New York. While I understand and support the need to protect tenants from predatory practices, this legislation will have unintended negative consequences for small, responsible landlords who have played a crucial role in maintaining affordable housing in our community. As a real estate professional with years of experience in the local housing market, I witnessed firsthand the challenges landlords and tenants face. I've worked extensively with a nonprofit organization to assist homeless families in securing stable housing, giving me a unique perspective on both sides of the rental equation. Many of the small landlords I've encountered have chosen to keep their rents affordable despite increasing costs, ensuring that families in need have a place to live. I have also seen the deplorable conditions of some rental properties owned by absentee landlords who do not invest in maintenance or tenant well-being. Unfortunately, the good cause eviction legislation will do little to hold these bad actors accountable while placing undue burden on responsible landlords who provide quality housing. The legislation as written will disproportionately harm small local landlords who have chosen to keep rents low and provide quality housing without excessive increases. By limiting rent adjustments to between 5 to 10% annually, this policy fails to account for the rising cost of property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and compliance with increasing regulations. This constraint will ultimately force responsible landlords to either sell their properties or neglect necessary improvements, leading to a decline in housing quality across the city. Furthermore, good cause eviction does little to target the true bad actors in the rental market, those who operate substandard housing and exploit tenants. Instead, it penalizes small landlords who have upheld ethical leasing practices. As a result, many landlords will become increasingly hesitant to rent to tenants receiving Section 8 or other housing assistance, exacerbating the very issue this legislation seeks to address, housing insecurity. Without the ability to effectively manage risk and adjust rental terms to reflect economic conditions, landlords will be more likely to sell their properties to large corporate entities, reducing the number of local community-focused housing providers. A more effective approach to addressing housing stability in Binghamton would include incentives for landlords to improve the quality of their buildings through grants, tax abatements, or low-interest loans, stronger code enforcement to target substandard housing and hold negligent landlords accountable, encouraging new housing developments such as the Homesteads on Grand project in Johnson City to increase the overall housing supply and provide more affordable options for residents, rather than imposing blanket restrictions that could drive small landlords out of the market. I urge the City Council to consider policies that foster investment in quality housing, promote responsibility, property management, and ensure that all residents have access to safe and stable homes. I appreciate your time and consideration on this important matter and urge you to oppose the good cause eviction legislation in favor of solutions that truly benefit both tenants and landlords in our community. John Darrow, I wish to voice my support of the mayor's veto regarding the good cause legislation before City Council. It seems appropriate for subsidizing government housing. However, it's another restrictive measures on the property owners trying to earn their livelihood. Economic discrimination is being imposed by this council on landlords. You know what? I actually read this one into the record last meeting. I think we're done. There you go.
Okay, last call from anybody who's here. All right, so that will conclude our public comment portion. We'll now move on to review of the mayoral veto. On Wednesday, we read the mayor's veto into the record. So I'm going to pass this over to Councilmember Rathmel in planning.
Thank you. This is, actually, I'll just make a motion to adopt local law 2501, a local law amending the City of Binghamton Code, section 265, to add chapter 4 for good cause eviction.
And override. the veto.
Thank you. I'll start over. I'd like to make a motion to override the mayoral veto of local law 2501, a local law amending the City of Binghamton Code, section 265, to add chapter 4 for good cause eviction.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? I don't have a problem with starting out with a discussion. I think a lot of it's been a pretty exhaustive process of having community feedback and responding to different questions and concerns and answering those to the point where I don't know how I can say anything that I haven't already said. I think one of the reoccurring themes, at least from the written comments today, was that this alone isn't going to solve our housing problems. I don't think I ever presented it that way. I think this is just one opportunity to solve some niche situations that could overall contribute to stability, but it definitely is not the one and only thing that we're pursuing in an attempt to address our housing issues in the city. And some of the recommendations that were listed, whether it's grants for improving homes and different better code enforcement. Those things are already being pursued. We've introduced some of those. If you aren't aware of it right now, there's a vacant rental improvement program through the land bank that's available for landlords to apply to. So this singular piece of legislation is not the comprehensive plan for how either the mayor, all of City Hall, and City Council is attempting to address some of our housing needs. I think, I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss for words for what else to say about this that I haven't said already. Is there anybody else that has any other points of discussion?
I'll say a few things. I had a chance today. I think people sent in a lot of emails, and one of the things that stuck out to me was a video. I think someone had a video, and it really is sad because I do understand both sides. I understand the sides of the landlords because you feel like you're getting screwed in the end because you are trying to do the right thing. But then what makes me like really sad is a story that happened with an older lady. She lives in downtown Binghamton and she's about 84 years old. And the house that she currently rents from, a new landlord bought it, and her rent is going to go up significantly. She has no family in the area. She's old and she can't really move around. She's not really mobile. And the new landlord wants to charge her $1,200 when her rent, and she's on a fixed income, is $600. Now I know that this is not the cure for everything, and I do understand, and I hope that we can continue to still have this conversation because something does need to be done as far as that goes with everything going on, different stakeholders. So I am interested in having that conversation, but I do feel like something has to be done. We can't say, oh, pause this, and then this woman gets evicted. Like there's so many different pieces to this, and I understand both sides, but I honestly would feel bad if this 80-year-old woman, was evicted unjustly. So that's just my point in it. I do understand. I know people who are landlords. I understand it is not an easy task. It is not something I'm not interested in it, but I do understand where people are coming from when it comes to being a landlord. So.
Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
Well, I guess just to reiterate from our Wednesday conversation, there was at least a number of us that expressed explicit support for relooking at this and reconsidering it and being open to tweaking it in about a year based on data and information that comes in. I did reach out to Allison Donnelly, who was here on Wednesday, about how if GBAR, for example, could submit data that they have access to. I presume Councilman Rathmel will have conversations with the Binghamton Tenants Union, which will be, and I've been having conversations with economics professors who are interested in looking at implications. I am certainly, I can't with 100% confidence say what this is going to do, but I can say that we're going to keep looking at it, and this is not something that's done after today. As Councilman Middleton was saying, the conversation is not over. I mean, I do, as I've kind of, my little talking point that I've reiterated a few times is that putting a pause to keep people in their houses while we have the pause in the discussion, as opposed to having a pause that keeps people and I have a similar woman to what you've described in my district that I've been in touch with. And I'm sure basically everyone on council knows a senior citizen whose rent is doubling or tripling. And that's what's that's kind of the pause that I see. So the other piece, something that brought up previously, and I've had a number of conversations relating to how the training, the landlord training that happened, that it didn't really meet the needs of landlords. And I am interested, and I know in my district that a lot of landlords do not even have leases at all, which they absolutely need in this, in this modern day housing situation. And I would encourage people who have connections to either introduce me to connections or take it upon themselves. Either way, I'm happy to help to try some more support mechanism to help landlords set up good to protect themselves. So say that.
I just want to quickly share. So I echo the sentiments of the rest of council. You know, I don't take this vote lightly. However, we have to do something to really think about our vulnerable and marginalized residents. And you know, I agree, right? We don't know what some of the unintended consequences or impact will be, but I just need to just reiterate the sentiments that I am committed, right? And I think that this entire body is committed to continuing to have conversations, assess, right? Have conversations also about, you know, what does success looks like, right? What are the positive impact that we're looking for, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence to measure that impact and make changes, modifications if we need to, right? But it's just important that we not only consider the perspective of landlords, but or residents who are oftentimes left without many options, right? And like I have a responsibility to our residents to really think about and consider that. So I just really want to reiterate that, like, I don't take this vote lightly. However, I think that this is something that is needed for our community.
I think I can say quickly about at least the training and education piece that we already conducted. I agree that there's a lot of room for improvement, and I've thought about it and have working on another training and have already solicited some people to help me with that. And I think it's really necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing it and then repeating and maybe having, like, depending on the day of the week that it works, maybe that just becomes the standing once a week training, and people can come in with questions and or concerns or whatever they're facing or seeing, and we can talk about it there. But I haven't set a date yet. I got to book the room and everything. But that should be coming either next week or the week after, depending on availability. I'll do it, or I'll try to get some other folks. I'm not going to put them on the spot to. If you know somebody that you want to recommend to me, that'd be great. But that's all I have on that. And is there any other discussion on this? Okay.
If anyone wants to look back to my comments on Wednesday, I discussed both about the continuing monitoring of the implementation of this law and the fact that I don't view this as either the end of the world for landlords or, you know, a massive fix for the renting citizens of Binghamton. But I did just go through my tenant roll in my head, and I have 8 tenants that I can think of off the top of my head that are all good, solid, well-paying tenants, long-term tenants that have come to me and rent from us because their houses were bought and flipped and their rents were hiked. I mean, that's how I ended up with these wonderful tenants. And I had two more people on Monday, same situation, house is being sold. They don't have a lease. The rent is either just being jacked up or they've just gotten, you know, notice to quit essentially. Simply because there's a new landlord coming in that wants to raise rents, wants to market to students. It's certainly having an impact to a significant portion of our population and making their housing less secure for them. Again, I've been dealing with rental properties and tenants my literally entire life. And I am sympathetic to the small landlord and the precariousness a bad tenant situation can create. Most of the concerns that have been raised in person and through the correspondence we've gotten, a lot of the individual cases that have been highlighted, you know, this law is creating roadblocks too. I think there's a clear way around them given the law. The portfolio foreclosed or boarded up properties that are being purchased and presumably gut and reno rehab, those are going to get a new certificate of occupancy. Those will be exempt from good cause. The situation of the two-family that's trying to be turned into a new owner occupied with an FHA mortgage. The current owner could, under good cause, take that apartment off the market with the intent being it needs to be empty to sell it to an FHA qualified buyer. That's a reason to evict. That's one of the loopholes, if you will, in good cause. They're taking that unit off the market with the intent to sell the building. So does that create a little bit more of a necessary window for it to be vacant? Does it make it a little bit harder to make that sale? Yes. It's another hoop. I understand that, but it doesn't make that situation impossible. That's a choice about how you're going to market your two-family property for sale. And I'll field these incoming questions and try and help people work through individual situations. I'm going to take that burden on. And I'm, as far as the nice individualized notices that City Council is causing rent to go up, for those folks that are getting those and want to have a talk through the actual need for that, please take advantage of the contact information on those notices and reach out to me. I would love to talk through your situations individually. So I'm just going to say I'm going to be conscientious about monitoring implementation of this. I will happily meet with Joe and the Board of Realtors and look at data and see how the inventory is being affected by this, if that's really happening, and also what's going on in eviction court. So I'm committed to that and committed to recognizing that these are a couple of new hoops, but this is business regulation that happens to fall at our level. People want to complain about NICEAG, that happens at the Public Service Commission, that happens at the state level. This is, at this time, something we're dealing with at our level. There's plenty of business regulation, and this is a business. So that's where I'm at. Thanks.
There's no further comments. Will the clerk do a roll call vote?
Councilmember Rathmel,
Aye.
Councilmember Matavetsky. Aye. Council President Dundon is absent. Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Murray.
Aye.
Council President Pro Tem Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Thank you. That is 6-0.
Motion passes. Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?